Welcome to the Joy Work Show, the podcast that goes beyond the surface of business, right to the heart, to explore the real joy and the stories behind success. Not just the moments of celebration, but the challenges that paved the way for them. Hiya, I'm Diane, and on this podcast, we know that joy isn't just about the good times. Often the greatest joy comes right after the greatest challenge. And last week, we had our first solo episode about my heart framework, and we covered H. And if the first step to building a joyful, sustainable business is to honour your vision, then the second, and just as important, they're all important, step is to evaluate the landscape. You can have the biggest, boldest vision in the world, but if you don't understand the landscape you're working in, you're flying blind. And this isn't doom scrolling, obsessing over your competitors, having comparisonitis, looking at people and seeing what they're doing so you can become a copycat. This is about smart, strategic awareness. So today's episode is all about getting your head out of the sand, scanning the horizon, and building a business that doesn't just survive the terrain, but thrives in it. So let's go. Why this matters? Why does evaluating the landscape matter? You can't win the race if you don't know the track. When I first started out in business, and when I hear my clients talking about business, too often we all think about evaluating the landscape means checking out what everyone else was doing and then coming up with some sort of cookie cutter approach, copying what they're doing. And if we copy what they do, we'll have that level of success. But that is not a strategy. That is survival mode. That is just looking for a quick win. That's not going to build the business of your dreams. Evaluating the landscape means understanding three things: what's happening in the market, what's happening with your customer, and what's happening inside your business. Because business doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Trends change, buyers' habits shift, platforms go out of fashion, algorithms mess us around. If you're not paying attention, you're always reacting. And reactive businesses rarely lead, they chase. So if we want to lead with joy and courage and intention, we need to know the lay of the land. But what does evaluating the landscape really look like? I want to give you a couple of quick examples: the good, the bad, and the oops, I should have seen that coming. There was a point early in my business when I launched something, a workshop I'd poured my heart into. I knew it was helpful. I knew it had value, but it flopped. Why? Because I hadn't looked around. My audience was exhausted. Everyone was offering something similar. The timing was wrong and the messaging just didn't land. If I'd stopped to evaluate the landscape, I would have seen it. When I did evaluate properly during one of my most successful launches, I had done the research. I knew what people were frustrated with. I knew the audience I had around me. I was having conversations with them. I paid attention to where the gaps were. I asked, I listened, I took the time to map out the environment before making my move. That's what this episode is about: strategic awareness. So how do you evaluate the landscape? Let's get practical. Here's how I want you to think about evaluating the landscape, using what I call the 3C scan: customers, competition, and conditions. Customers, what's really going on for them right now? What are they struggling with? What are they searching for? What have they stopped caring about? Because quite often we think it's what they're struggling for, what they're talking about, what they need. But we forget about the things that they're not bothered about anymore: the platforms they don't use, the terminology they don't use, the products they don't use. So use polls, open-ended questions, mini focus groups. I've held the Insight Circle, market research groups. Go and find your customers and speak to them. But more importantly, listen. Number 2, competition. Not to copy, but to understand. What's saturating the market? What messaging are people responding to? And where are the gaps? Healthy competition scanning helps you spot opportunities. And please, let's make a note here that if somebody else is doing it, that doesn't mean that you can't. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Quite often it means there is a marketplace. There are people buying the solution that you have. But what you do need to think about is what makes you different to that competition. Where are you positioning yourself? And is that position strong enough? It's not about envy when you're looking at the competition. It's not about comparing yourself. It's about curiosity and knowledge. You're curious about what others are doing. You're gathering knowledge to know what your customer wants and what works, but always know your differentiation. Number 3, conditions. What's happening in the world? Industry, economy, or platforms? Are there upcoming events, launches, trends, holidays that will have an impact on your product, your solution, your business? Has something shifted in how people are spending time, money, or energy? If people are no longer going on to a platform for talking's sake, but that's where you're spending all of your time and energy to promote your business, there is a huge gap there for you to fix. You are promoting somewhere where people are no longer hanging out and paying attention. What do you think your next move should be? Is AI making your service more or less in demand? It's going to be no new news to you that AI is going to take some jobs away, is going to take some processes away, the way that we do things. But when you think about your service, is there something about it that AI wouldn't be able to do? Is there a human element that will always need to be there? And does AI actually make your service stronger? Staying up to date with newsletters, industry reports, podcasts, even just a weekly scan of your platforms can go a really, really long way. When you're researching the marketplace, you're researching the marketplace for your customers and for your products, but also you need to look at an overview from a world point of view. We've just had 2 major political changes in the UK and the US in the last 12 months, and that has brought around so much change in the marketplace. The way people are spending, the way people are thinking, and the way people are feeling. And the way people are feeling is always going to have an influence on the way that they buy. And here's what you really need to think about. This isn't a one-time job. Just like strategy, evaluating the landscape is something we need to return to again and again and again, because conditions change, the world changes. And I really hope your business changes lots in the positive sense. Everything will have peaks and troughs. And I want your business to have those highest highs. It will have the lowest lows, but it only would have the lowest lows can it have the highest highs. But you have to think about it. What is your ability to adapt? What contingency plans have you put in place? When you look at the next 12 months, what could threaten your business? But then flip the coin and look at it the other way. If things were to happen in the world, what opportunities would open up? If one platform closes and another opens, is that opportunity, or are you just going to focus on that platform closing? Think about where there is threat and having a contingency plan, but knowing where the opportunity lies. That's the secret of the entrepreneur. They will know that where there is threat, there is always, always opportunity. And your ability to adapt, that's what keeps you not just in business, but ahead of it. Okay, and as you know, when I do these solo episodes about these types of topics, I don't just want to talk at you and leave you. I want you to think of a challenge that you can go away and do this week. So I want you to take 1 hour, that's it, 1 hour, and do your own mini landscape evaluation. Ask yourself, what am I assuming is still true about my audience that might have changed? Where am I not paying attention because it feels overwhelming or boring? What's one opportunity or risk that I have been ignoring? Jot them down, talk them through with someone, journal around it, go into the groups that you're in and the communities that you're in and speak about it. Or you can even come and do it in the Joy Work Members Club. The waitlist is now open. The link is in the show notes. But strategy doesn't need to be lonely. You don't need to do it alone. And quite often when we're talking about evaluating the landscape and threats and risks, especially when we think about the big ideas of the world, go and speak it through with somebody who could give you a different point of view. What the impact on some political decisions could make on the world and your business. And you might be listening, thinking of this, going, Diane, this is a bit serious to be talking about my small business. I do it for joy. This is a Joy Work Show. But trust me, when you understand that the effect that these things can have on your business, you can be ready for it. And you can turn it into an opportunity for your business to thrive. So let's have a little recap about what we have covered today. Awareness is a strategy. You can't lead with purpose if you're ignoring the terrain around you. Your job is to scan the field, not bury your head in the sand. Number 2, use the 3C scan. Customers, competition, and conditions. This is your framework for making informed, grounded decisions instead of reactionary ones. Number 3, evaluation is empowerment. When you know what's really going on, when you understand what's really going on, good and bad, you can stop guessing and you can start acting with intentions and you can start feeling empowered in your decisions, even if that decision is one you don't necessarily want to make, or even when it feels hard. All this episode is about putting you in an empowered position in your business by understanding what is going on around you in the marketplace and with your customers. And when you can do this, it can impact your messaging, your marketing, your products, your sales, and ultimately your bottom line. If this episode makes you pause, think, or scribble something down, I'd love for you to send me a message or share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And always, I would love for you to like and subscribe this podcast. It helps more people find us. It helps me to know that we're doing the right things and telling the right stories and coming up with the right strategies for you and your business. But until next time, keep doing the joy work, and I will see you later on this week with one of our wonderful guests.